The views and opinions expressed during Love and Life with Lana and Dave are those only of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or the position of our podcast hosts or affiliates. Any content provided is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. All right, let's do it.
You're listening to Love and Life with Lana and Dave, the podcast where logic is power and you take control. Thank you for tuning in and making the choice to listen in and get ideas for your own love and life. Now, here are your hosts, Lana Williams and David Vaccaro.
This is Lana. It is July. We are in the middle of July at this point, which is crazy. How is this year going by so fast? Today is going to be the day that I kind of speak to my tribe, my squad. These are mostly women. However, some are also men that are my MBTI type. Now, MBTI would stand for Myers-Briggs type indicator, right? This is somewhat of a personality test. On the light side, you can check it on the internet. You'd find something like, most people find something like 16 personalities. Now, the reason that is called what it is, Myers-Briggs is made up of a 4x4 type personality, right? I'm going to get into that a little more in a second. What I'm going to do right now, though, is start from the beginning, right? So I'm going to kind of give you some background on MBTI, what exactly it is, some of the things people might say about it, and then I'm going to give you an overview of what that entails, and then I'm going to dive down into my own type because that's who I'm speaking to today. But I'm also going to let you know how it is that you can figure out what your type is in general, and then we're going to circle around and kind of just describe camaraderie and community and things that you may need to know as a person that may or may not have certain traits that others share, how important it is to know that you're not alone in the world, and that sort of thing. And how also to respect someone else's preferences and personality and desires and stop, not project yourself onto other people and hope that they are acting like you. So there we go. That's how we're going to start it off. We'll start off with somebody by the name of Carl Jung. Now, Carl Jung, or Carl Jung, he was a Swiss psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, founded a school of analytical psychology. He was a prolific author, illustrator, correspondent, complex, controversial character. He actually came up with a certain kind of psychology based on what eventually became Myers-Briggs. And then you have two women that came along and took his work and added to it. So these two women are Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers. And so when you hear Myers-Briggs, this is why you're hearing the beginning of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. That's what it stands for. That's who it's named after. Took his concept and sort of branched it out, added something to it. The test, it says, relies on the Barnum effect, flattery, confirmation bias, leading participants to personally identify with descriptions that are somewhat desirable, vague, widely applicable. There are people who believe that MBTI is like a horoscope. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think it is. To me, and this is just my logic, which is what we do here at this podcast, right? We add logic to things. To me, MBTI is a much more logical indicator of personality for one reason and one reason only, at least when it comes to horoscopes and astrology. Astrology and horoscopes are basically static, and they're based on when you're born, right? It almost doesn't give any nurture ability. Now, it's nice to say, fire, air, earth, and water and things like that. And there's a lot of added things to astrology that take you from that baseline of when were you born and where were you born and under what sign and sun and stars and that sort of thing. It adds some nuance to that, and that's fine. But it's, at the end of the day, when you were born indicates who you are. And to me, that kind of can't be static for your entire life. There has to be some change based on the way that you live and the environment you're in and the things that happen. This, to me, MBTI is a reverse test, and it's going to place you where it is based on your answers, based on your personality. So who you are right now is who you end up being with MBTI. That does change. Obviously, it doesn't change a whole lot. Your static, your main personality is what it is. But as far as finding your place in the world, why you do things you do and things like that, the test doesn't make you who you are. It reflects or reveals who you are based on how you respond to questions. So your personality, it's hard to explain, but to me, it's the opposite. I mean, it's very dynamic and not as static as a horoscope would be. So, a horoscope to me tells me, well, if I'm a Gemini and I was born in June, no matter what happens to me in my entire life, I'll be a Gemini. So all the traits of Gemini will still be me. And no matter what I do and how I change it, it just won't make any difference and is very futile to me. Again, it's interesting to learn and find out and have your chart done and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. And as you drill down into suns and moons and all the things that happen on top of your birth date, it adds a little more nuance. But again, this doesn't do anything but tell people what your personality is based on questions that are psychological that you answer. Now, people can say, well, it's pseudoscience, or it's pop psychology, or it's, I guess you can look at it that way. But I much rather take my personality based on my morals, my values, things that psychologically I answer and tell you where I'm at today. And then take that. Doesn't really matter what the label is. It actually doesn't matter what it labels you as. What matters is that you find out within, a scope of people who are listed differently where you sit. You know what I mean? And then it actually, in my case anyway, helped me to understand where other people were and, that had the personality that I had. So out of the 16 personalities, and this is going to be everybody within, everybody in the world would fall into one of these 16 categories, with the exception of people who are on the cusp. You know what I mean? People who are between, or people whose personalities change as they go through life-changing events and traumas and things like that. You have 4 letters that are going to tell you who you are, right? So your first letter is going to be either an E or an I. Generally, that means that you are either an extrovert or an introvert. Now, what people think those things are varies based on who you speak to. It's subjective. However, the kind of general idea of extrovert and introvert is where you get your energy, what environment you feel most comfortable in, right? So introverts are generally get more energy and are more at home and comfortable within themselves. They're more introverted as far as they are internal people. They kind of like alone time. They like, downtime. They like nature. They like serenity. They like kind of things that are quiet, peaceful, and not a lot of craziness, right? Those people can be extroverted and can have extroverted traits. They can mask extroverts. The problem is how much of it they can do before they nod out from the energy that they're giving off, right? They just get their energy from solitude. Extroverts are the exact opposite. Those people get their energy from other people, from social events, from a lot of stuff going on, crowds, other people, connecting, finding people, bonding, socializing, networking. These are the things that extroverts like to do. They can be introverted. They can have introverted traits. They can sit around and have solitude and be quiet, but it actually drains them to be in a downtime state. They don't like it, and they will seek out people. So think about that, right? That's going to be the first letter of your 4, one of those 2. Your second letter is going to be either an N or an S. Now, if you're an N, that means you're more of an intuitive person. And intuitive people usually kind of talk about broad spectrum things. They like to kind of discuss ideas. They like to kind of look at the future, see what things are going to be like, change things, if they seem to be inefficient. There's a whole lot of concepts and things that intuitives like to speak about. They like to talk about, they like to analyze, everything, not just human behavior. They like to analyze everything. A spreadsheet is a really fun thing for somebody who's intuitive. However, you could be a sensor. That would be your S, right? The S stands for almost like where you are in the now. And S's are very sensory, which means that they're interested in the world around them. They're what is happening right this minute. So they're not really interested in what happened yesterday. They're not really interested in what's going to happen tomorrow. They kind of like live for the moment. They like to be in the present and say, okay, well, this is what's going on right now. And sensory means, touch, smell, taste, sound. Those are the ththings that they find interesting. That's harmonious for them. So they would enjoy nature, but not so much as connecting, I guess in a different way than an intuitive would. But if you are an IS, if you're an intuitive person and you have a sensory second letter, then you would be very, very in tune with the outside world. As far as nature goes, or animals go, or things that like kind of just sitting on the porch and reading in the rain, things like that would be good to you. You would love that stuff. The third letter would be either an F or a T. Now, if you're a T, that means you're a thinker. That means you go through mostly everything you do is a thinking event. That means that it's not that you don't feel certain ways. It's just that you don't lead with your feelings. You don't make decisions based on your feelings. You don't, if you're an F, it's the exact opposite. And mostly you are emotionally based. And not that you don't think or that you don't use your brain, but mostly I feel this way, I'm going for it. I feel this way, I'm making this choice. You're going to do everything. You're going to lead sort of heart on sleeve and lead at first with your emotions. Again, these are very broad, general definitions. Obviously, there's way more nuance to it as you keep going, right? The last letter is either going to be a P or a J. You're either going to be a perceptive person, a perceiver, which means that you're going to perceive. It's going to be, I don't know, in my way of looking at it is how does it look? How does it seem? If somebody is perceptive, they're going to look at things in the way that they perceive them, right? So truth is perception, that kind of thing. It looks like this to me. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what it is. Judgmental, a J is a judgmental person, or judgment is what it stands for. Or judging, actually, is the actual version of the word that they use. And that is like I'm looking to see what's going on underneath what I think I see. So I'm not going to take everything at face value. I'm going to dig deep and see if I can find out what's happening underneath the things that I see. That's the difference, right? So that's more of a why thing, as opposed to it looks like this. It walks like a duck. It sounds like a duck. It's a duck. Whereas we're kind of like, well, it looks like a duck and it walks like it, but it could be some variety of fowl. You know, the difference between perception and thinking, or excuse me, perception and judgment is like the forest for the trees. I read that somewhere one time. Anyway, those are your 4 letters. Then you have these combinations of letters, right? So that's as far as I'm going to give you as far as everything that goes together. And then at the end of the day, the combination I have would be INTJ, which is an introverted thinker, intuitive person that's like has a judgment type way of looking at things, or judging type looking at things. And again, a judgment doesn't mean I'm judgmental and I'm thinking I'm going to cast judgment on people. It's just more that we're looking for the details, the documented details of something, or we want to know more about the thing that is in front of us than most people. Okay, so that's the way it's perceived of over time. Judgment has changed. Not changed definition, but has been used in different ways. So that's not what it means. It doesn't mean I judge you. I think I'm better than you, doesn't mean that. So INTJ is just like something that I found based on, I've actually been tested 3 times. There are tests that you pay for that are like psychological tests where you sit down and you go through, pages and pages of questions, and, you actually get certified as a specific thing, right? That's how you would really do it. That's happened to me twice. One in a work environment in an old job that I was at, and once when I was real young, I was going to, well, not real young, but I was in my elementary years, I think, I was looking at private schools. I was being interviewed for one. So I was given the test at that time, along with a bunch of other stuff. So twice I've gotten an INTJ, and twice I've thought, well, that's nice to know. And I've sort of dismissed it and went on with my life. Then a third time, I was kind of like, I keep getting this. So I might as well go look. I'm being the type of person I am and the type of people that we are as INTJs. We are research fanatics. Everything is researched. So again, it was enough. It was intriguing enough for the third time to kind of go look it up. And I did an online test, which came off as INTJ, but I read a lot. I read the description of it and I said, that's really uncanny. That's actually very accurate. So it was enough for me to start really delving into like peer reviews and documents, things that were research papers and all kinds of crazy stuff. Read up about, Carl Jung, read up about Myers-Briggs, how it became what it was and how it changed into something different and all that kind of stuff. And then I said to myself, all right, I'm going to, now that I know kind of the situation, it would really be nice to find people who get me, who understand why I do what I do. If I'm here, this is how I look at it. Whether you're single and you think that you never find somebody again, the odds that you have found somebody, to me, if you have history, then you have repetition. So of course, if you were married at some point, you can be married again because those are the odds. You can't say to me, well, nobody ever wanted me and nobody blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, if you ever had a relationship in the past, I'm going to throw that in your face and say, well, what about this? As far as I'm concerned, if you exist and you are a specific way, you cannot be like the absolute only person on earth like that, right? So I actually thought, well, all right, there's probably plenty of people like me. Let me see if I can find somebody. The beginning of it started with I started to look for somebody who had a blog going, right? Because there were several different types of blogs from people who were specific types. And I couldn't actually find anything. What I did find was somebody by the name of Penelope Trunk, who was an ENTJ. Her personality matched me as far as mostly in the sense that she was more of an extrovert, and her blog is mostly occupationally based, or it was. And it's more like, all right, you're in the workplace and here's how you deal with things and that kind of thing. And a lot of it was fairly helpful, but it wasn't 100% helpful because she wasn't exactly my type. She was just very close to it. And so I said, well, since I can't find anybody who has my type, let me just say this. INTJ for men is an extremely common type, but INTJ for females is extremely rare. And so that's that extra piece of information or that extra piece of understanding about, what it is that makes you you, understanding how women are as this type is something that's more important. Not more important. So I get along with a lot of men that are INTJ, but with women, it's just a camaraderie that's unreal. It's just unbelievable. And so I wanted that. I wanted somebody who had the same type as I did. Maybe I could understand as a woman that is this type, like what was her life like? What were things that she had to deal with? And understand from a very young age, I was more or less kind of told that I was abnormal or I didn't do things like everybody else. And most people just tried to fit me into a box that they thought I should be in. You should just do this more. If you want people to like you, you should do this more. And so I was always given advice on how to do things the right way because I was always doing things the wrong way. That was basically how I was. So it was kind of like I was an alien and I didn't, when you come up with my personality, it's just very unusual and there's just not a lot of people like you around. So you really do start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Because especially when I grew up, because I had these little small neighborhoods that I grew up in and there was a very small amount of social circle that you're in, right? So as the world gets bigger and as the internet came along and you started to see people all over the world and what was going on, it was much easier to find people like myself. But in the late 60s, early 70s, that wasn't something that was easy to do. Understand that INTJs are also they're very private people. They're very low-key people. They're very much loners. And so it's almost impossible to find people like that because they're just not out and about. And they're also not looking to find people. They're not those type of people. Now I know where now I would mostly find somebody like that because they gravitate to certain environments. But as a kid, I wouldn't have known anything like that. And I wouldn't even have known anything about this particular thing or any kind of thing about my type or anything like that. I just knew that there were people I had things in common with, but not 100%. So fast forward to 2016, I decided, well, I can't find what I'm looking for. So therefore I'm going to create a thing and I'm going to make something up that other people can find, because if I can't find it, then there's got to be people out there that don't know what's going on or don't have a community of people like this. And as I'm looking for it and I need it, I can't be the only one. Again, if I exist, others must exist. So I did. I put together a blog. It's an outdated blog. It's been a couple of years since I've added to it because of stuff like the pandemic and things like that. So that would be rareintjfemales.com. So I do need to get back to that and pick up where I left off and continue that blog. I created a group on Facebook. That's where it started. And it was called Rare INTJ Females. We welcome you. I think I put something there like that. When those people saw that, they would be like, oh, we're welcome here. Okay. There were specific rules to the group. Yeah, this is for INTJ females. However, it is not only for INTJ females because I believe that we have to get along with people in the world. And believe me, if we had our way, we would probably just go live on an island somewhere and not bother with anybody else except ourselves. For the reason that sometimes it's like talking a foreign language to speak with people who are not us. And that's a majority of people. And it gets frustrating. So we have to keep a line open, right, to the rest of the world so that we can relate. And we also want to leave a line open to the rest of the world so that they can understand who we are. Because many of us are married or have friends or work in places with people that are not us. And we have to get some kind of translation going between who we are and who we're dealing with. Because we've got to do that. We've got to put food on the table. We've got to have connections. We've got to have, community. I do believe in diversity. I believe everybody should be who they are, but they should also respect who everyone else is, right? Especially when it comes to what kind of personality you have and what makes you happy, what interests you have, things like that. So that's basically what went on. And from 2016 until today, which is 2024, so it's been 8 years, and I can't believe it's been that long already, we've built up somewhere around 12,000. Now, that doesn't, something like in the world, out of all the Myers-Briggs types and out of both men and women and in between everybody in the world, women are something like 0.05%. Like we are extremely low number as far as the universal stats go. INTJ men, the group of them are much, much higher. I forget what it is. I actually have to look at it to find out what it is. But there's also, I think it's like INFJ males are also extremely, extremely rare, that kind of thing. For whatever reason. Mostly, if you were to grow up in my day and age, you would call me a tomboy, or that would be that was the verse, right? I was climbing trees and catching bugs and, had snakes for pets and, rats and hamsters. And I was always in jeans or, in t-shirts, and I was always coming in dirty. And, I was outside playing in the woods all the time, building forts and, hiking and all that kind of stuff, getting on my Huffy bike and going wherever. So I was not like a diva-ish type. If you were a girl and you liked, and I have two cousins that are boys, and they were, until my sister was born, they were the kids I played with. I mean, obviously I had kids in my neighborhood and stuff like that, but family gatherings and things like that, it was me and my cousins, and I'd go there and, I'd stay with them, and my mom would go away, whatever the case may be. So I was around them a lot, and they were two boys. It was like Army guys and Lincoln Logs and, Legos and Matchbox cars. And, that was what they did. And so to me, I was glad I was exposed to that. And I was interested in that. That stuff was stuff that I found interesting. Like if I really wasn't interested, I would not be bothered with it. But it was stuff I was around, and I found it fun to play with stuff like that. Tonka trucks and erector sets and things like that. That kind of stuff was just like what we did. And other than the fact that I had different plumbing than my cousins did, it was all the same. We all had fun and we all loved it, and it was great. And, obviously before you hit a certain age, you really don't get it anyway, right? So, but if I was more analytical, less emotional, there's a whole lot of stuff about me that is not your typical girl, right? And I don't mean it that in a good way or bad way. Just the majority of girls were interested in things that I wasn't. To this day, there are things that women do. There are things that women get together and do that I'm just like, I'll go and I'll do, but I don't necessarily love. Wedding showers are not my favorite thing. Baby showers are not my favorite thing. Makeup parties are not my favorite thing. I mean, these are just things that there's just a whole lot of stereotypical female things that as I was growing up, I didn't understand. And I'll still be like that. Sometimes I'll just see women do things and I'll just be like, I don't get it. Anyway, it's because of, the type of person I am. My personality isn't like that. Now, it has nothing to do with Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is just an indicator of what personality I have. And it puts me in a category where I can now seek out people who are also INTJ. And again, this is a 12,000 girl group ish. Obviously, it's not all INTJs. It's probably like 94 to 96%. So we were a real majority in that group. However, we do let other types in. We let men in, whether it's, binary, whatever. We don't care about gender. We don't care about, we want people to come in and learn, right? And to discuss and talk and whatever. There are men that come in because they're married to an INTJ and they're just trying to figure out how to make it work. They're just like, sometimes we can be very confusing. We could be baffling. We could be hard to follow. Now, most of us are, again, some of our type personality traits we're usually very blunt. I mean, pinned straight down the middle, INTJ women are very blunt. We don't sugarcoat things. We don't really speak from emotion. We mostly speak concise, direct. We say what we got to say. To us, it's not an emotional issue. We can be really tactless, but we don't mean to be that way. What we want you to know is the plain truth. We want you to know the bottom line. We want you to get the bullet points. To us, that's important. So there are people who think how you say something is more important than what you're saying. In our case, what we're saying is the most important thing. And then how we say it's sort of kind of might be something on our radar, but we might forget about, right? So we also don't seek, a whole lot of validation. Obviously, we seek peer support. If I'm talking about a thing and somebody comes along and has a piece of a topic that I'm talking about that I may have neglected or missed or whatever, they'll come in and they'll add it. I want somebody to come to me that has expert information on something that I don't maybe know, a piece of a topic that maybe I didn't brush on or whatever, or maybe they have something that they know that I don't that changes my opinion of that topic. I have no problem with that. We actually love that in my group. Outside of my group, you cannot disagree with somebody and have it not turn into a shit show. In our group, it's an actual, I didn't know that. We actually do research as we discuss. So our people will go off, look it up. Actually, we won't even provide information with that unless we provide a link and a valid link. We don't provide videos. We don't provide sound bites. We provide something that we've looked up 15 times and come up with the same response. to give you a solid piece of information to follow. We will usually do that. So that's it. We're very informational based. We want information. We love to learn. We love to read. We love to listen to audiobooks. We love to listen to podcasts. We like to watch documentaries. These are all people that get me, right? So this is the stuff that I do for, I don't know how long. I was a bookworm and I never understood why nobody else, I mean, I wasn't the only person that read, but I was really into books. I'm really into reading to the point where my friends were just kind of like, why do you do this? I actually feel like if I was plugged into a supercomputer, I'd be happy. This is the kind of person I am. I feel like, how do I get all of the knowledge of the world in my brain? Like the fact that I can never know everything there is to know is an actual depressing fact for me. Although I know a lot of people couldn't understand being like that. That's something that actually bothers me. I'll never live long enough to know everything there is to know. And even if I lived 5 times, I would still not know. And it's upsetting to me that I could never know that much. It's exciting to me to know that I'll never stop learning, but it's a bummer to me that I can never know everything. You know, this is something that plagues me. I know a lot of people could care less about that, right? Finding people who get you makes sense, right? So we're the nerds. We're the dorks. We miss a lot. Much like there are people who we are adjacent to ASD in the sense that there is a lot of things that we understand that ASD people may deal with, such as not understanding nuance, not understanding subtlety, not picking up on cues. I mean, this is stuff that is stuff that happens to us when we're at work. Of course, to us, we're very literal, and I don't want to say pragmatic or semantic, but we're very compartmentalized. So when we go to work because work is at work. Like, that's what we do. There have been, and I'm only going to say this because it's the truth, there have been men for generations and generations at offices and in jobs that work at work and don't want to socialize. And that's not very unusual for those people. Nobody thinks that that's a problem. But for women, for some reason, it's getting better, but it's really going slow. That there are women who want to go to work and get their job done and become more efficient. We tend to get pegged as antisocial for that. Our type tends to be looking at how the most efficient way to do something is. And so I'm not saying that we don't like procedure or process, but we have a hard time with it if it makes us go the long way around. If we see a way to get something done quicker, to us, we're saving you money in a company, right? So if we see a way to do something better, or maybe to get it more thorough, to understand your checks and balances or whatever, just to take a process and make it the fastest, most accurate thing we can. That's how our brains work. And we bump up against process a lot. Like, well, we don't do it that way because we have to go through this and this and this. And there may be something that a company wants us to do or a job wants us to do. I'm not saying that INTJ women in the military are having problems, but they might, because there's a chain of command that we have to follow. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense to us because it just takes 5 days longer. And if something is, from what all of my friends that are INTJ that work in government, I hear this all the time. The inefficiency in government is like maddening. And for the people that I know that deal with a process like, or a environment like the military, where everything has to be requisitioned and there's all kinds of steps that have to happen, but not everybody's sure why, with the exception of we've all got to follow this thing. And the following sometimes is the most important thing in these environments. For us, it's maddening because we just want the thing to get finished, right? I wanted to be it's so much money to be a project manager, and I thought about it. I'm like, let me go through a project management class to go over the general idea of what it is, what a project manager would deal with in the course of a job, on some site or whatever it is, or whatever the project is. And I decided I can't do that because I have such a hard time with stops and redos and personality types. If I'm a project manager, I've got to deal with 15 people or 20 people, and they all have a different personality. And I have to deal with each and every one of those people in the best way possible to get the work I need to get out of them. And just reading about that made me tired. It just made me tired to even think about, I've got 20 different people here and they've got to deal with them in 20 different ways. That's, to me, the most time-consuming, frustrating thing that I heard. And at the beginning, I want to be able to know that where my project ends is going to be on this date. Here's how much money I'm going to have spent, and here's how much of it's going to get done. And projects don't go like that. From what I learned, they're actually possibly things that make projects stop, or you have to, so I got to ask for money. I thought I was going to need more money than this. So, I would go crazy trying to predict how much money I would need because I would hate to stop and have to ask for more money. To me, that's an inefficient thing. So, of course, I'd be beating myself up all the time over the fact that the project isn't getting done the way I planned it. And I would probably spend so much time planning it that probably would never happen. Somebody else would probably have to just step in and start it because that's how my brain works. Also, we have pattern recognition. That means we can walk through a place and we can predict based on who's in the place, what kind of environment it is, how it's laid out, what we've already experienced in our lives, who we know, all the kinds of things that go into this little supercomputer of our brain. And we can actually kind of see things happening previous to them happening. And it looks like telepathy, but it isn't. Or it looks like we're like psychic, but we're not. It's just like our brains are at that level where we actually work out what I call building scenarios or running scenarios. Our brains are always test running everything, as we're doing whatever. So we are doing the thing we're doing, but we're also running 6 or 7 alternate realities in our heads as far as like how different the outcome will be if we change a thing here or change a thing there. So we're doing plan A, but we usually already have plan B, C, D, and E sitting somewhere. That's already been laid out and thought out and put in a folder and on a desk somewhere. Then we've got another 4 or 5 in our brains that are running as we're doing plan A. And as we've already figured out B, C, D, E, we've now got F, G. These things are all running through our heads. Maybe. We cannot shut that down. So I've had to learn in order to sleep how to hack my brain in the sense that I can't, if I just lay in the dark, my brain will go absolutely bananas trying to figure out all kinds of things. And so I had to learn to stop my brain. I have to learn to do certain things before I go to sleep to keep my brain from wandering like that, because if it does, it will keep me awake. I'll just lay awake with my eyes open, trying to figure out, I don't know, anything, a million things that I should have done, things that I need to do, whatever. So that's that. These are some of the personality traits of INTJ females. None of this is new to anybody who I have in my group, and they'll be hearing this, so none of this is new. But the important reason that I brought this up was to let people know that like who they are is always going to be something that someone else is, right? As much as we want to be unique and the only person on earth that's like anything, let's face it, logically and practically, we are not. Somebody out there is like us, right? We cannot be the only, even if you look at like, there's this crazy thing that I do sometimes with celebrities and singers, where it's like, here's a celebrity that I followed for I don't know how many years, but there's always somebody coming up behind that person that like is almost like looks like exactly like that person. They have some kind of genetic makeup where they just look like a doppelganger of the person that I'm talking about. Then there's like a person that comes up behind them. And the person that I like is usually some carbon copy or some kind of doppelganger of somebody that my mother followed when she was younger. So like, there's only so much uniqueness you can have in the world. This is the age, right, of finding out everything there is to know and of not denying yourself anymore. Well, I have depression, right? You can say that you have depression. You can say that you have anxiety. There's things that you can now learn about, understand, even maybe change, right? Years ago, it was different. It was like everything had to be labeled, but it also had to be like streamlined, right? And maybe just because we didn't know anything about the human condition, right? As we go on, we learn more and more and more. So it seems like we're splitting off into 1,000,001 different things, but really we're just learning more about ourselves, and we're learning what didn't work before and what we can do now. And this works because that did, and this might work. And then someday in the future, we might find out that while this worked, it maybe didn't work as much as it should have, or here's the outcome of what we thought we were doing, and all that kind of stuff. And this is how science is. This is how medical stuff is. This is how knowledge of humans are, right? Right now, we know of anxiety. We know about depression. We know about intrusive thoughts. We know about all kinds of things that like we didn't understand when we were younger. So you owe it to yourself, right? This is just one way to say, okay, well, who am I? And find out a little bit about yourself. Find out that what you're doing is not something that like is completely out of the out of the blue and unusual and abnormal. You're not an alien. Somebody out there gets you, right? somebody out there understands you. Somebody out there is like you, and they may be going through some stuff like you. And it's not a bad thing to know that there are people like you out there. That's actually, in my opinion, a real supportive fact. It's really, really therapeutic to know, oh, there's people out there like struggling and going through shit like I did. And oh, I wasn't the only one. And obviously, odds and statistics, I call it, right? Obviously, you can't be the only one. But when you're younger and you're coming up, you can't see that far. Obviously, your brain's not cooked enough yet for consequence reasoning and being able to figure out that you can't be the only one like you or that's going through what you're going through. And you see time and time again with all these stories and things. I watch a lot of documentaries, and at the end of a lot of them, it's like, oh, I thought I was the only one. I turned out to be that it was several of us. Whatever it is. I mean, if you see people silo information enough, then the people in the silos are never going to think anyone else gets that. And they're going to be like, well, it's just me. And I'm not going to say anything to anybody else because I'm the only one. Anything that we've seen within the past 10 to 20 years is the moral of the story is everybody's going through it, and I just thought I was the only one, and it turns out 55 other people are going through the same thing sitting in their house that I was. So think about that. And knowing who you are, that brings you like a sense of community. You can build friendships based on that, even if at this point friendships are online, offline, or whatever. So there are such a thing as online friendships, but to find people just that you can bounce off of, that think like you, that finish your sentences, that there's something about that. There's just something about that validates you as a human being, to know that there are people out there that you can say, listen, I know you'll understand this. And our group is like that. Somebody will come in and say, I understand, this thing happened and I know you guys are going to get it, because nobody else in my life can get this. My husband, my kids, my family, my friends, whatever. I know when I come in here and tell a story, that everybody can understand my dilemma or how I feel about this thing or how I took this thing or whatever. It's good to have a place to go. I guess you call it a soft place to fall, where you can talk that stuff out, reason that stuff out. We have a lot of girls that come in and just are looking for straight logic. Look, I'm trying to figure this thing out. I've done everything. I banged my head up against the wall. I've gone through everything. I've read everything. I've watched every YouTube video, whatever. I'm at the point where I don't know what to do. I come in here and I say, listen, there's this problem I'm having. I need straight up opinions, and I need productive information. In my group, people will give you straight up and productive information. I've had girls come in that have been in abusive relationships, and immediately women will start looking up, hey, what area do you live in? What's happening, and look up lawyers and shelters and all kinds of things for women who are in the area that you're in, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Kansas, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Canada. They will pull the information that you need where you are. Our group has become sort of like a reference guide in a lot of ways. And so it's kind of cool. There are people who probably, I don't know that, I don't want to take credit for saying, well, I've saved people's lives, but it's good to have a group of women who just get it. I mean, there are women who are, this past week, we had somebody who was on a cruise, and she's like, I'm on this cruise and I'm with my husband and a bunch of his family. And I needed to come in here and just tell people that I want to get 5 minutes to myself, and I can't do it. And we get that. We're just like, oh, we totally get it. And then we'll throw suggestions out. Hey, grab some AirPods, or hey, are you near here? Are you near there? Are you on a cruise ship? There's people who've been on cruise ships. There's people who've driven cruise ships. There's people who've fixed cruise ships. And they're all like, that you can do this. Here's some options for you. And in my group, that's like a lifesaver. If you're in the middle of a place on a cruise and you have internet and can get to our group, they can give you some really information that to get yourself into a place where you're isolated and you have downtime and you have things that you can do to avoid that, or to get to a place where you can recharge. And that's an important thing on a place like on a cruise where you're with people 24/7. That's an actual health issue. You need people to give you a break. And it's hard for us anyway to be around somebody 24/7, 365. We need downtime. We literally, it affects our well-being if we don't get it. And that's another thing. We like our alone time. We like our downtime. And we have such a hard time with people that are seekers of other people, because we're just kind of that's not our thing. So people who don't want, to be sitting by themselves will usually seek us out. Well, I don't want to be by myself. And we're kind of well, I do. And so there goes the dilemma. You reaching out to me and trying to get me to spend time with you because you don't want to be by yourself. That interrupts my solitude. So, it's a yin and yang thing, and depending on, you can work it out and compromise it with specific people. But it turns out like I have a bunch of people who maybe not exactly my type, but share one of those 4 letters with me. And I understand things now about them that I didn't before. I have friends that like would make plans and then not go. And I that used to frustrate me. And it still does, only because I don't care if somebody goes or not. What I care about is what's happening. And if you're a friend of mine and I say, let's go do a thing, and you say, sure, that sounds like a good idea. People that will do that and then change their mind drive me crazy. I'd much rather have somebody say, you know what, this doesn't sound like my thing. I think we should do a thing, but that's not a thing I want to do. Or hey, I'm having a crap week and I don't really want to go anywhere. I'm just like not in the mood for this thing. I'm just not up for it or whatever. To me, that's honesty. And I'd much rather have people say that. But as my life has gone on, and I've been the person who doesn't want to go to the thing. So I get that, but I've never said yes to somebody and not done it, with the exception of like an emergency or something really terrible, me getting sick or something like that, or me getting called into work or something. I've never actually said yes to a thing that I didn't want to do, right? So there are a lot of things that my friends will do that I get, and maybe the way they handle it is different than I would, but now I'm starting to understand, there's all these different people and here's their motivation in life. And so this is the stuff that makes them who they are. And then you can because you know that you have unique traits that people should understand and respect, just like that, you will be the same way with people that you're around, that you understand, this is your thing. You know what I mean? I'm not going to try to make you like me. I'm going to ask that you try not to make me like you. I respect you for who you are, and I expect what you're about. And I want you to be you, right? So I don't want you to change who you are, but that might mean that we can't always do things together, or that might mean that we may be able to not be able to discuss certain topics or go to certain places or, spend certain times of the year together or whatever. But that's okay as long as it's accepted between the two parties as this is just part of our connection and we should mutually respect that, right? And then there's just venting. In the group, venting to the masses. We call it a hive mind. Sometimes people come in and just say, hey, hive mind, I've got something I need to share, but sometimes they like to vent. They don't want solutions, but, and this is a caveat, in the beginning of our podcast, we did something called Fix It or Complain, right? People that want to vent will come in and explain, I'm venting. I don't need any solutions. I'm just saying what I need to say. And then at the end of it, thank you for reading what I had to say. Have a nice day. And we're all like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Sometimes we will come in and say, you know what? We know you didn't want solutions. What we'll give you is camaraderie. We'll give you empathy. We'll give you support and say, you know what? That sucks. Or I've been there. I get it. Or you can do it. Or you hang in there, or whatever it is, that they need to hear, which is what we think we might want to hear. They request it, and we're all more than happy to give it to them. Our problem is people that just vent and don't want solutions, but don't tell you that, or want solutions and it sounds like they're venting and they don't, which way are we going with this? Do you want us to help you fix this, or do you just want to complain? That's fine. You're in a place where you can't do anything and you just want to whine about it. We're totally, we're on board, and we can listen to you, and we could let go of the problem solving thing, and we could just be supportive. That kind of stuff is important, right? As a person. Where am I in the world? Who am I? Where do I fit in? And where are the people that get me? And it doesn't always have to come from, although it would be nice, it doesn't always have to come from a romantic partner. It doesn't have to come from your family. In my group, we've discussed it several times. As a matter of fact, it definitely does not come from your family most of the time. There are some people who have INTJ relatives, and I'm really jealous of that because I do not. But understanding, well, maybe I do. I think one of my cousins may not be INTJ, but he's definitely got 2 or 3 letters that coincide with mine. But it doesn't matter, right? Those people don't have to be like you, but you just have to be able to know where to be able to bounce conversation off people that are like you. You just need to know where to go to get that feedback when you need it, or to be able to plug into that when you need it. Is a godsend. It's a lifesaver. It's something that if you don't have it, you could go down some really dark paths in life. If you don't have that, I'm normal. These people don't get me, but that doesn't mean anything wrong with me. It just means that we're different. We've got to let go of you're different than me, something's wrong with you. We've got to let go of that in this society. We really do. There are people that just won't let go of that, whether it's, and I'm just going to say this generally because I don't want to get into any kind of, but whether it comes from politics, whether it comes from religion, whether it comes from, social construct, culture, environment, there are just people that won't accept that somebody else is different from them and, refuse to participate in anything but something that they understand. This is something that creates diversity within these 16, having nothing to do with race, having nothing to do with gender, having nothing to do with sexual orientation. This is just an example of, let's say, I'd say you're 16 people or you're 16 types, and then you're in between the 16 types. So let's say 32, you've got your people that are on the cusp. And if you had that little environment to survive within, what did you want to understand how to get along with all of those people within that little community? And then to top it all off, you have cognitive functions, which is a whole nother ball of wax that I won't get into here and now. 16 personalities, there's idrlabs.com. 16 personalities is it is an overview. It is very, 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 very watered down, and it's not going to tell you everything you need to know. It's just going to give you an overview. I'm not saying it's not accurate, but it's nothing like pages and pages and pages of questions that you would take if you were going to take a professional, MBTI test. A professional Myers-Briggs is a completely different thing than going online and I don't know how many questions there are. I forget. 30, 40, 50, something like that. Maybe you can equate it with MBTI for dummies, a general overview, but it will help. It will give you a place to start. And then from there, you say, okay, well, what are my cognitive functions? There's another thing called Enneagram. You can find out what that is. There are some things that determine how you act about certain things, how you feel about certain things, a portfolio to work with. And then maybe from there, you drill into just like some deep reading and you get into some serious like case studies and to understand it more and like where you sit in the world, based on where everything is. So that is the MBTI. That's basically for the INTJ girls. And then for some of you, it's just going to be completely foreign and you're going to figure it out for the first time and maybe have some interest in checking out yourself. What are you? You know what I mean? What are your 4 letters and what kind of personality do you have? Does it tell you why you are the way you are? And does it help, you to understand other people, right? I mean, you don't want to categorize people for any reason. You don't want to pigeonhole people for any reason. But if you're going to do it in the sense that I want to understand how another person is, if you are an INTJ and you're dealing with somebody who's an ENFP, that kind of thing, those are 2 distinctly different personalities. You'll have more of an idea of that interaction based on that type. Like I said, you don't want to ever outcast people based on types. That's not what we're doing. It's just it's more of an understanding. It's more of some way to understand the spectrum, right? A little better. So take it that way if you're going to take it at all. And like I said, that's the difference for me between horoscope and MBTI, right? And also, by all means, have fun with this when you're checking out this stuff. It's not that serious. Anyway, we have more to come for today. And I believe this should fall in the middle of July. Like I said, it should be falling on the 11th, I think. I will talk to you later. And I'm still holding down the fort. www.lanandave.com. All podcasts and social media. If you have a platform that you listen to, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, you can subscribe to us there. You can download there and give us a 5-star review. If you love what I'm talking about and you have any interest in it whatsoever, 5-star reviews help, and they help the podcast to get seen and recognized by new people. So please do that for us, and we will be talking to you soon. Have a wonderful mid-July. Bye-bye. Hey, you just listened to Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share the podcast, leave us a comment or review, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We'll see you soon.